Imagine if your car can be part of a self-driving fleet and that can make some dollars while you are like inside your office or working. So there is definitely a disruptive economy around it, for sure, right? There will be fewer cars on the road. There will be fewer cars that will be idle. There is definitely, and not everybody need to buy a car.
Hello, we're Global App Testing, and this is Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth. This is the fastest growing, most exciting podcast in product, and we will be looking at every single angle on how you can grow your enterprise product by talking to professionals in some extremely exciting businesses. On with the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Building Globally, Lessons in Enterprise Product Growth, brought to you by Global App Testing. I am your host, Adam, and today we're joined by Sriram Palghat, the Director of Product at Qualcomm, focused on data and simulation factory on the cloud to train and validate AI models used by car manufacturers. In particular, that means driverless cars. First of all, hello and welcome, Sriram.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Before we dive in, I'd love for you to, this is a pretty complicated world, and I'd love for you to just start by sketching the world you inhabit, the different kinds of business, kinds of stakeholder. What does your role, Product Director at Qualcomm, actually do?
So I work with engineers and scientists who actually build the AI model. So my first customers, our internal customers. So we make all these tool chains that works and that helps these engineers develop their models faster. Once we have that product and tool chain working for our internal customer, we productize it, and then we take these tool chains to our customers, which are large OEM car manufacturers, and help them in their time to market. We also establish partnership with companies where their products are complementing with ours, right? So it's a package solution.
Fantastic. And this is obviously all about product growth. For me, and I'm a beginner to this market, but for me, chips for car manufacturers seems like a really interesting market because it kind of distorts some of what we assume about competition and other market forces in different markets. Most, I think, engineers, most product managers are used to stuff that you can kind of throw out very quickly. Obviously, there's huge entry costs, and there's very few chip manufacturers, and then very few clients, very few businesses that are able to produce AI cars. So could you just give us a sort of sense of how competition works, how you as a product director could influence, market advantage for Qualcomm over the next option for your clients and actually generate growth?
Yeah, so it's at the end of the day, it all boils down to high efficiency in performance. The car is getting more and more complex every day, right? I mean, you need to run infotainment on the car. You have so many different sensors in the car. We need to run a large computer. The car is becoming a giant computer by itself day by day, right? So it's all about how can you make these chips super powerful, at the same time cost effective, because it's a high tech and volume game at the end of the day. So it becomes very, very similar to the phone market.
In what sense is it similar to the phone market? Sorry.
So it's a volume, right? There are so many number of cars on the road, and who gets the maximum market share to get their technology into those cars, right? Very similar to, I know we have phones, and there are several phone manufacturers. Similar to that, there are several car manufacturers. And how do we get our chip to be used in those cars?
Is it the way that the actual clients choose their providers? Is it like, are the chips that you build specialized to individual car manufacturers? So if you have a car manufacturer X, is there like a 5-year planning cycle where they've got to have chips from Qualcomm built in a kind of specific way to work? And so there's that kind of slow planning. Like, how would they actually decide to move from one provider to another if you managed to build a chip that was more efficient at the cost?
It's all about what kind of capabilities they want to run in those and what is the product which they are launching in the market. According to that, what kind of capabilities of chips we offer, and if any of our chips work for them, and basically that's exactly how the process works.
Very good. Cool. So when you When it comes to actually growing accounts, how do you, is there a way that affects the product process? Do you work with clients to actually design the chip capabilities in the first place then? Or is it more like you've got a sort of portfolio of chips based on what you think the market needs, and then they would sort of browse and select the product that would be
the product
appropriate
that
for
would
them?
work for them? That's exactly how it works.
Very good. Driverless cars then. So we are not yet at full driverless capability. I guess this is the kind of the main, the main capability that cars are angling for. I'd love to just start off by getting a kind of sense of, if L5 is no driver needed, where are we now? What's the current state of the market, and how far are we away from driverless cars?
It's a complex problem, and it requires a long runway and deep pockets, right? I mean, not everybody is able to sustain an autonomous car, manufacturing, right? I mean, so companies like Waymo and Zoox are still spending money while perfecting their technology, and not many companies can sustain that kind of investment in this economy, right? That's why you see large companies, even like Ford, shelve their L4, L5 dream. So it's still at least 5 to 10 years out, and you need to still make continuous and large investment to make L4, L5 happen.
And what is so two questions then. Question one, what is the actual the biggest technical challenge? I mean, you said that there's lots of technical challenges. What's the biggest thing that we can't do, and why?
Yeah, so making a car drive by itself is a problem everybody solves quickly, right? I mean, it's not about just making the car by driving by itself. That is like off everything. That's the simpler problem to solve. But it is dealing with the safety and dealing with these edge cases that makes the launch more challenging. For example, in Argo AI, we were training our cars in Miami Beach area. Diversity, large, complex area, very complex scenarios which you encounter. So our AI models gets better and better and better. Like in these kind of scenarios, we deal with like crazy skateboarder in the middle of the road, sudden downpour of rain, encountering a funeral procession in the middle of Miami Beach area. I mean, these are these scenarios that actually make launch complicated, right? I mean, it's a persistently somebody need to get at all these tiny edge cases to actually safely launch a car in the market. That's where the money gets sucked.
There must also be, though, ways in which the current state of technology is superior to humans, right? I would imagine with things like reaction times, are there advantages that the AI has that would actually make it?
Absolutely, right? If you take the car accident history that is released by NHTSA, very high percentage of these accidents are caused by humans, and that too by making very, very silly errors like looking at their phone while they're driving and things like that, right? And a self-driving car would never do these kind of things. So definitely a self-driving car, once it's perfected, will be a lot more safer than humans. But at the same time, to get there, you have to still cross all these tiny hurdles, and it's like a long tail problem is what we need to solve for, right? We need to cross all these tiny hurdles in order for the car to be perfect, to be launched in the market.
And given that cars are not a 100% perfect technology in terms of safety, right? As in a car that a human drives, there's accidents every year, unfortunately, and would love for that to be lower. How is it that, presumably you're not going to be able to actually tell that L5, no driver needed, is fully working until you actually have the driverless cars in production, driving around different countries, and we're collecting real world data in terms of what accidents actually happen outside of the lab. Go on.
Yeah, so that's why all these companies test in these areas, right? I mean, so the way the companies launches, you put a driver behind the wheels, and there is always a safety driver to take over the car if the car is not performing as expected. So actually, before even taking the driver out, there are millions and millions of miles they drive with a driver behind the wheels. In addition to that, they also drive in the simulation environment, like they create an artificial city, they create all kinds of scenarios in that artificial city, and they actually run millions and millions of miles of kilometers, miles of data, right, in a simulated environment as well, right, to make these cars actually deal with these edge cases.
And is there a process of regulators sort of sitting in on this? How is the kind of regulator to client engagement happening as you get closer to that L5?
Yeah. So for example, every state and every city has their own regulation, like California, for example. These car manufacturers are supposed to report back to the state on the number of incidents they have, number of incidents avoided, number of incidents they couldn't avoid, be it in the real world or be it in the simulation world. Publishing those data to these the cities and the governments are very, very important. That's exactly where some of the issue happened for Cruise, where some of those information was not shared openly and things like that, right? So that is exactly how regulated this environment is, right? I mean, so that is why it'll take time, right? I mean, to make sure that they prove that the car is very safe, even in the edge cases. Humans, we don't go through that kind of scrutiny we pass a driving test and we actually start driving the car. But to make a car to drive by itself, these companies jump through a lot more, hoops and challenges.
And do you think that there's going to be, or there's likely to be, ways in which the actual physical world could change in part to accommodate the cars? So, for example, you could have a situation where it was legal for these cars to drive on motorways, where I imagine the variety of threat inputs is much more, narrower. There's fewer strange things happening on motorways.
Absolutely.
So are there sort of initiatives like that going on? Is that something that...
So already, companies like Waymo have started driving in freeways, right? I mean, so they expanded from San Francisco City to Daly City now, and now freeways are part of the equation. So yes, so slowly and steadily, companies who are able to sustain it are chipping away in making their technology better.
Okay, but it's not currently legal for them to drive without a driver on motorways, right? It's just that they are...
They just up. If I remember right, Waymo just launched to have driverless in motorways. Yeah.
Okay, so there are currently driverless cars driving around that are L5 on motorways and that are currently empty of people.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! I didn't realize that. Very good. I'd love to talk about, in terms of the pre-L5 world, right? So we're currently in a world where people are selling some kind of driverless or semi-driverless cars. I wonder whether how that space is changed by the fact that there's a lot of speculation about the L5, about the full driverless environment kind of hanging over it, and what some of the products are that are on the market right now that are on shelves and are available to buy in some countries. I wonder if you could just quickly talk us through some of those.
So there is a strong business case for it. I mean, it is becoming expensive and time consuming for sure, and that's why some of these manufacturers in this economy has slowed down. But there is a strong business case for it for sure. Like, for example, 90% of the time, where is your car? You drive a car. Where does that car 90% of the time? It sits in a parking lot or in a garage, right? So are we getting the real value for the money what we are spending towards our passenger cars, right? Imagine if your car can be part of a self-driving fleet and that can make some dollars while you are like inside your office or working. So there is definitely a disruptive economy around it, for sure, right? There will be fewer cars on the road. There will be fewer cars that will be idle. There is definitely, and not everybody need to buy a car. You're now buying a phone and you're just adding a phone service to the car. Very similar to that, you can actually buy a car service from any of these companies. Whenever you want, wherever you want to go, there will be a car waiting for you, right? I mean, that is definitely that is the disruption that will eventually come to be. Once the market matures or once the technology matures. Yeah, so there is definitely a disruption waiting to happen. It's just a question of time.
But obviously those are the things that are going to happen after L5. And that's what people are speculating on. So what products are there that are available right now based on the technology so far?
Yeah, so the way it works now is there are two ways companies go at it, right? So you either go from L2, L2 plus, L3, meaning advanced driver assist capability. That's called as the automated driving, right? Where you can I take my eyes off the road and hands off the wheels, and can I still keep driving? And whenever there is a situation is presented, the car alerts you and you take control back, right? That is L3, for example, hands off, eyes off. Whereas L2 plus is very advanced cruise control. To an extent, you can see L2 plus, L3 capabilities like, hands off, self-driving capability, what Tesla calls it. I mean, it's already there, in the commercial car, right? That's the bottom-up approach, right? Whereas companies like Waymo directly jumps into L4, L5 and completely try to take the driver off of the equation. And they try to make it available. They call it ring fencing. So meaning it doesn't drive by itself everywhere. It's called as geofencing. So you actually go carve out a specific piece of city, and then you make the car perfect on that city and then launch the self-driving capability in that geofence. So if you see how these company launches, they launch in a smaller area and then expand and then expand and then expand, and then they actually slowly grow out in the market, right? So that's exactly how a self-driving robo-taxi service scale. So it's already available. So if you go to some of these cities and some of these ring-fenced areas, today you can ride a self-driving car. Actually, I took the longest ride I took was 45 minutes ride from one end of the city to another end of the city in San Francisco. Fantastic experience, right? I mean, but within that area, they are perfecting the technology, right? So it's already available. You can actually go take a self-driving car and go and pay, and the user experience is amazing, actually.
And does it look like a car? Does the driver's seat face forward with it's America, so maybe not gear stick to your left and a kind of wheel in front of you? Is other kind of essential accoutrements of a car still there, such that you sort of have to sit facing forward?
It is still there. So they are in the process of building purpose-built car where the steering wheels kind of go hide under the seat and things like that. But currently, it is like a ghost driving the car. So you will still sit in a normal car with a driver's seat and a steering wheel, and you will see the steering wheel turning by itself. I mean, so that's exactly how these cars are launched now. But there are designs which are being worked on where the steering wheel gets hidden.
And presumably, I mean, I guess with Waymo, do you know what percentage of US coverage they've got then? I mean, it must be slowly
very
expanding
small.
out.
Yeah, very small, but so only certain cities, right? I mean, San Francisco, Phoenix, and now Los Angeles. And so there are only certain cities they launch, right? I mean, that's where they start. And in fact, that's the best place to actually train your car to, because diversity of edge cases you can deal with. You can make your AI model perfect, and then you can launch very quickly to the other areas.
So the cities, I guess the cities aren't that fungible in terms of, I mean, like to me, you would, if you've launched in San Francisco, then that's a broadly similar environment to New York. You could argue, I mean, they're both complex urban environments. Is it that they are training on individual kind of junctions where there's a sort of, there's a blind overtake in this junction and it's a bit weird? Is that why it's city by city, or is it just that there's something more general about the urban space in San Francisco that is different from the urban space in New York?
No, it is very similar, but every city has their own little nuances. I mean, for example, we used to train our cars in Pittsburgh, and there is a Pittsburgh left turn, which is, it is a more like a courtesy of a driver to kind of allow some left turns happen. And the car needs to understand that, hey, the other person is actually yielding Pittsburgh left turn, and you need to turn. So every city has these kind of little nuances, but the broader technology actually is trained. It will be common, right? I think so. That's exactly how you launch in a city. So you launch in a city with the driver behind the wheel. Make sure that you learn all those nuances of the city, and then you launch in a city. And you also run in simulation. All those city-specific nuances, make sure the car is handling them well, and then you launch in a city. So once the technology is perfected, and once you have all the right kind of simulation environment, launching in a city should start happening faster, quicker, but it's the initial days it takes time.
Because right now, if Waymo has, you said very, very low coverage, so I'm going to take that to mean something like 2% coverage, let's say. The journey to 50, 60% coverage could be quite fast, right? I mean, they're training in broadly similar things. They've got to learn whatever the equivalent of the Pittsburgh left yield is in every city. But crucial, I'm surprised that they've not started on motorways, which strike me as the easiest driving environment.
They are starting, as I mentioned, that they have expanded into Daly City, and I think so that will come. I mean, actually, to be very honest, motorways, driving in motorways is a lot simpler than driving in a dense urban setting. I mean, you have less unpredictability in a motorway than in a busy intersection, for example. Right. So that is from a technology perspective, it'll happen. Right. I mean, it's the regulatory aspect. They want to make sure that everything is perfect before they can launch. So the way the expansion will happen is once you have launched in several cities and there is a cookie cutter approach to actually launching in these cities, then there will be quicker launches into the cities, right? I mean, that's exactly to launch multiple city in a cookie cutter fashion is what now these companies need to master.
And there's going to be a sort of a fight for the market between companies that are car manufacturers and software manufacturers like Tesla, and companies that are partnerships between a car manufacturer like whoever, Toyota, and a software manufacturer,
like Waymo,
like Waymo. Do you perceive any strategic advantage to either approach, or is it? We'll just have to see who wins the market.
Yeah, so that's why many companies make their careful bets, right? I mean, if you see the way Volkswagen and Ford was doing it, they invested in Argo while they were actually running their L2 plus journey internally. They partnered with Argo, or they invested in Argo to kind of do the L4, L5 part, right? And then once Argo, once the investment stopped for Argo, Volkswagen is continuing that journey, working with another, L4, L5 partner, Mobileye, for example. So they are already, doing their L4, L5 journey with a partner. So I think some companies who still have the ability to continue make that investment is making that investment in a smaller scale than what it was before. So everybody is betting on both the market, but with the current economy, it's much more cautiously in some cases, and some are like just focused on L2, L2, 3, and passenger car, tech.
But it sounds like the cat's out of the box, right? I mean, if there is and I'm going to say something, and please agree or disagree, but if L5 is possible, and it is possible to have a car that is truly self-driving, then that proposition is so much more powerful, so much stronger than advanced cruise control or whatever is involved in L2, L3, that it is a completely different and transformed market. And that whatever although the car industry might be on its back foot now, or demand might be soft or whatever, it will be transformed by this. And to seize market share, you've got to be getting to L5 now, because there is a company at L5 right now, and it's Waymo, and that's going to have a huge first mover advantage.
Yeah, but the way these car manufacturers are approaching this is, at the end of the day, these incremental steps in L2, L2, L2 plus, L3, they are all still very much these things which they need to master for a self-driving car as well, right? So all of these capabilities are absolutely important in slowly, getting to where you need to get to completely become a self-driving, and that's exactly is the approach Tesla took, right? I mean, they slowly mastered all those, basic technology like lane keeping, driving, and seeing around you and maneuvering and things like that are essential anyways. So all these technology investment are not going to go for waste. In the meantime, what is happening at the L4, L5 level, either they have to slowly go bottom. So there is a time there is time and investment, right? You have to make L4, L5 work in the next 5 to 10 years, for example. That's where the market is, right? So either you go bottom up, make L3 and launch L3 and make L3 successful and then add on top of it, or you partner with somebody who has solved L4, L5, not too much worried about L2, L3, and then you actually launch the market. So that's where the bet is happening on either side. And China, for example, is already getting very, very advanced in both L2, L2 plus, L3, L4, and L5. Actually, there is a lot of technology advancement happening in China, for example.
Do you have a view on which is the more prudent bet? Whether if you were a car manufacturer and you had to make a decision whether you'd go for the L2, L3 slowly upwards, or you'd just cook it with an L5 provider straight out the box?
In the today's market condition, in today's economy, and with limited amount of cash to actually invest, I think most of the car manufacturers are doing the right way. I mean, so what Ford did with Argo AI is exactly that, right? I mean, they did not throw away the technology, but actually they are taking that technology and making it work for their L3 journey, right? So I think going bottom up makes more sense in the current economy condition, unless you are like a company which has a deep pocket and not worried about a long runway.
What are the early market signals like in terms of the level of adoption, the amount of demand for the self-driving car? I mean, I obviously came onto this call actually slightly behind in terms of my awareness. I would guess most of these things are going to launch in the US before they reach UK if they're training on a city by city basis. But how is there a like huge hysterical mass adoption like with an iPhone, or is it like is it much more muted than expected? How are those early signals faring against expectations?
Much more muted than that, right? I mean, so I'm a technologist. I actually am comfortable with this technology being safer. So I will jump into a self-driving car anytime. That's not the case with anybody and everybody. There is a lot of adoption issue challenges. There is a lot of safety threshold. It's the psychology of people need to be worked slowly and steadily in order to make people adopt a self-driving car. Yes, people like that's one of the early mover advantage from companies like San Francisco City, where most of the people understand the technology and can trust the car. But to see that kind of a car hits every single city, it will take time. I mean, there is a lot of it's about the click that needs to happen in our head that yes, that car which is driving by itself is safer than my husband driving the car, right? I mean, I think that to get to that point, there is a lot of things these companies need to do to win the confidence of the people. And any large disruptive technology also comes with its own challenges of displacement of jobs, protest against that. I mean, there are several hurdles these companies need to cross before they can actually, it becomes like my phone, right? I mean, I think that's why it takes 5 to 10 years. And that's why commercializing this and becoming profitable takes time.
Well, I guess it's also, and one of the major things is that people only buy a car certainly every 5 to 10 years, every 10 years, maybe? How often would you say an adult buys a car if an adult is reliant on a car?
Yeah, five to 10 years is the right time period. Yeah.
I think the first step would be to get most people to take a single journey in a self-driving car. That would acclimatize them more to a self-driving car than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a technology, like the ride sharing is definitely a technology which is paving the way for that, right? How many teenagers or young adults who are not living in the suburban these days buys a car, right? I mean, definitely that equation is changing day by day, right? I mean, it's much easier for someone to jump into a Uber and take. So the target audience are definitely them, right? That's why the geofencing in a small region, mastering that region works really well, because as long as if you are able to capture that demographics, which is not buying a car and jumping into an Uber every single day, convert them into using a self-driving car is definitely the first step to go. A self-driving car hitting a suburban, it's a long way to go.
Got it. So the majority of self-driving cars being sold right now, which are geofenced, are being used by ride-sharing apps, including Uber.
That's the market which will flip into self-driving car first. The market which is heavily dependent on ride-sharing, they would be the first adopters, heavily using a self-driving car.
Building Globally was brought to you by Global App Testing. To find out more about how best-in-class functional and UX testing can help your product grow, head to globalapptesting.com. If you enjoyed what you just heard, click follow on the platform you're using right now. Building Globally is available anywhere you get your podcasts.